Hello everyone, and thanks for the invitation. So today I'll talk about our work on building efficient probabilistically checkable proofs from these objects called high-dimensional expanders, which I will soon introduce. And this is joint works with Noam, Dor, Nikhil, and Zive. Okay, so let me start by defining what probabilistically checkable proofs are. So imagine that someone gives a claim to you, such as the Riemann hypothesis, and they give you a really long proof for this claim. And now one way you can check this proof is to go through it line by line and check whether the line you're reading follows from all the previous lines. But this might be really cumbersome and it would take time at least linear in the length of the proof. So what a PCP does is gives you a way to encode this proof into a different format where you as a verifier can toss a bunch of coins which are logarithmic in the size of the proof, query a constant number of locations and read a constant number of bits in each location, verify whether they satisfy some constraint or not, and output yes or no based on this verification. And the guarantee you get is that you will always accept correct proofs with probability 1, and you will accept wrong proofs with all but some small probability of error. And in fact, if the claim was wrong, no matter what proof, even a cheating prover might give you, you'll only accept with some small error. So any questions? Okay, and now you can see that ideally we would want the size of this encoded proof to be as close to the size of the original proof and the probability of error to be as close to 0 as possible. And this also leads to, these improvements lead to improvements in the downstream applications of PCPs. And in fact, today we'll focus on the most stringent setting of PCPs where we want to build 2 query PCPs where the verifier is only allowed to query 2 locations in this proof and each location contains a constant number of bits. And this is because it leads, these type of PCPs have applications to hardness of approximation. Okay, so now let's see what was known about the size versus error trade-off for 2 query PCPs. So the original PCP theorem showed that you can build PCPs with a size which is polynomial in n, where n is the length of the original witness, and the error is very close to 1. So one way you can bring down the error to 0 is just that the verifier could query more locations in the proof, like repeat the same step, and doing this, repeating the verifier k times would bring down the error to 0.99 to the k. But of course, this increases the number of queries to the proofs. So it's not even clear that if you're allowed only 2 queries, can you even bring down the error? And in fact, there were a bunch of wrong proofs that claim to do this. But in a seminal work, Raj showed how to bring down the error to any small constant while incurring a much longer proof size. Again, a polynomial overhead in the original size. So the next question was, can we get the, bring down the size of PCPs further? So can we get as close to n as possible? And there was a lot of works which did this, culminating in a work of Dinur, who showed how to get PCPs with a mere blow-up of polylog in the original length, while again getting small, large error. So the immediate question was, can we achieve the best of both worlds, like get a near optimal size and small errors simultaneously? And there was some progress made towards this question by Moshkowitz and Raz, who got almost nearly linear size and any small constant. But on the other hand, there were also a bunch of barriers that were shown to improving the approaches of Dinur and Raz. And today we'll see one of these barriers. It's actually very nice. So our work resolves this question and gets near optimal size and small error simultaneously based on new approaches using high dimensional expansion. So in the next the part of the talk, this will be the brief outline. I will state our formal result and corollaries, and then I will give you a overview of our PCP construction, and finally I will try to give you tell you about one of the main components in this work, which was a result in property testing, a specific property called direct product testing, and the main ingredient in that property testing result. Okay, so let's just recall what are constraint satisfaction problems, as they give us a nice alternative way to look at PCPs. Okay, so recall that two CSPs on the alphabet K are given by a constraint graph, and where each edge is labeled with a constraint between the labels K cross K, and the goal is to satisfy maximum fraction of constraints. Like find an assignment in K to the n that satisfies maximum fraction of constraints. And that's called the value of the CSP. And the size of the CSP is the number of variables plus the number of constraints. And today, we will only focus on two CSPs, where each constraint only involves two variables. And it will be important for us that, we'll fix the graphs and we'll look at constraint satisfaction problems on very specific types of graphs. So for the talk, you can think of, once given a graph, you can think of a 2 CSP on this graph as just graph coloring for simplicity. So any questions up to here? Okay, and now this alternative view of PCPs makes it convenient to construct PCPs, which is that a PCP with error epsilon and size f of n is just equivalent to reducing 3-SAT, the 3-SAT problem to 2 CSPs with a gap, where yes instances of 3-SAT go to yes instances of 2 CSPs, and no instances of 3-SAT go to instances with value which is really small. And in the reduction, the size blow up is just f of n. So this is our goal, to perform such a reduction, with f of n being n polylog n. Okay, and what we show formally is that for all epsilon, which is your error parameter or the value parameter, there exists a large enough constant that depends on epsilon, and we show a polynomial time reduction that reduces 3-SAT to 2 CSPs with value at most epsilon, and the alphabet of the 2 CSP also depends on epsilon.
How can we assume that the number of clauses in 3-SAT is linear in the number of variables?
Yeah, you don't need to assume. Okay, I meant actually 3-SAT, the number of variables is n in the 3-SAT. Yeah, sorry, this is a typo. But you can always perform some, increase it to a larger 3-SAT with a linear number of variables.
It's possible that you could get it all the way down to linear in n, right? Or there is a barrier that shows that it's impossible.
So there's no barrier, but basically all these reductions, like even the Noor's PCP, they don't really care about the starting problem. So even reducing between NP-hard problems loses polylog factors. So if you had such a reduction, it would be for a specific problem like circuit SAT or 3-SAT. You would have to use very specific. To answer your question, building linear size PCPs is open even with value 0.99. So any other questions? And this using the standard framework of converting PCPs into hardness of approximation results, we get that, okay, under this exponential time hypothesis, which says that solving 3SAT takes exponential time, we get that even approximating 3SAT to a factor which is significantly better than random takes 2 to the n by polylog n time. And this really, like, intuitively, this polylog n comes from the polylog n loss in the size of our PCP. And you can get similar corollaries for other problems like 3-lin and so on. And we also get corollaries for many fixed parameter tractable problems like finding k-cliques in graphs. Okay, so with this formal result out of the way, now let me tell you, give you like an overview of our construction, and also tell you a bit about how high dimensional expansion comes into the picture. Okay, so now this is our goal, to start with 3SAT instances and reduce them to 2 CSPs with value which is some fixed constant, let's say 0.01, and only incur a polylog n blow up in the size. So as a first step, we can already use the Noor's reduction, which first reduces 3SAT instances to value 0.992 CSP instances. And this, her reduction only incurs polylog n blow up. So this is good. And now this is the main part that we need to do. Okay, so it's actually insightful to look into the Noor's reduction and see what are the barriers to immediately extending her reduction to all the way down to 0.01. So let's do that. Firstly, the main component in her reduction was a very novel use of expander graphs. So recall that these are very well connected constant degree graphs, which at the same time have many of the nice expansion properties possessed by complete graphs. So one such property is that every small set of vertices has a lot of edges going out of it. Okay, so now let's see why, at a very high level, why expanders are useful for PCPs. So a goal in a PCP is to take a proof with, let's say, one error hiding in some location and convert it into, encode it into another format where you have many, many errors spread all across the proof. Okay, and for simplicity, let's consider the 2 coloring problem on expanders, even though it's easy to solve. And let's see how we can build a PCP for this problem. So let's say this graph is actually not 2 colorable, but maybe only one edge is colored in. There is an assignment that violates only one edge. And now we want to build a new assignment for it. Encode this assignment into a format where it violates many more clauses. So what the Noor did was to ask for an assignment to every neighborhood in the graph. So instead of this location having only the color of the vertex here, you ask for the prover to give you a coloring of the neighborhood, a small constant size neighborhood around this vertex. So now each location will contain 10 bits or 20 bits instead of 1 bit. And what a verifier can do is to firstly, when it queries one location, it tests whether that location has been colored, the whole neighborhood has been colored correctly. And it also queries 2 locations which overlap and tests whether these 2 locations are consistent. And the key insight is that one edge which was incorrectly colored is now going to be present in many neighborhoods. And because of expansion, you will have that the error is spread across the whole proof. And repeating this procedure iteratively leads to a reduction or a 2 CSP with value which is bounded away from 1, which is 0.9. So now an obvious question is, can we bring this value all the way below even half? So could we do some similar thing? And Bogdanov showed in a very nice, even just one page paper that actually you cannot do this. So let's see why you can't. Okay, so generic expanders look like trees. Each neighborhood looks like a tree locally, and every tree is of course two colorable. So what a prover can do is to completely ignore the original two coloring and just forget about it, and just give a random two coloring to every neighborhood. So pick a color of the vertex you are at randomly and then just propagate it to its neighbors. And now, of course, at every location, you satisfy the constraint that you're two colorable. And even if you pick two locations where the neighborhoods overlap, you will only test inconsistency with probability half. So this gives you a PCP which cannot have error better than half.
Like, I don't know if I get it correctly, but like if you test one more and see if they are still consistent, don't you can like reduce the probability of they pass like with consistency like 1/4?
Yeah, but so we were interested only in two query PCPs. So with two query PCPs,
Oh, I see.
yeah,
I see.
you
Okay.
can only get
yeah.
it to half. Yeah. So any other questions? Okay, and so the issue seems to be that expanders are always locally two colorable, even though the global graph may or may not be, or at least generic looking expanders. So we need some property which is, more structured expanders. So this brings us to these objects called high dimensional expanders, which were suggested by Denur and Kaufman towards, PCP constructions. So what are these objects? So they are just hypergraphs which are expanding. And again, we want, so think of a universe of size n, and each hyperedge contains a constant number of vertices. So here in this picture, it's a 6 hypergraph. And the whole hypergraph only contains theta of n hyperedges. And today I won't define this notion of expansion formally. But intuitively, you should think of these hypergraphs these hyperedges having a lot of intersection with each other, so they are very well connected. So for instance, you can show that if you pick hyperedges randomly, they won't be a high dimension expander. And again, we want these, intuitively like this, these HDXs to sparsify the complete hypergraph, where you have all possible hyperedges.
There's one question. So we're like you said, we are expanding hypergraphs, but are we checking the single hypergraph to look at the expansion property, or like?
Yeah. So just like analogous to expander graph, like for an expander graph, you would check the spectrum, for example.
I see.
So here you would check some kind of
Spectrum.
of the hypergraph. So any other questions? Okay, so one immediate advantage that these have over expanders is now we will consider graphs that come from these hypergraphs, where every hyper edge is just replaced with a clique. So this gives us a graph, and this graph has a lot of cliques and much more structure than regular usual expanders, locally tree-like expanders. So in fact, the neighborhoods are no longer tree-like they have a lot of edges, triangles and cliques.
So the point of this is you don't have some trivial coloring like the previous expanders because of the tree structure. You could pick a random vertex and just propagate it. Here
Yeah,
the point
yeah,
is you
so-
can't do something like that.
Yeah, so that was, so that's exactly my next slide. So let's consider a two coloring problem on HDX. So fix this graph now. We are thinking of, just usual graphs that come from the HDX. And if you asked the prover to give you an assignment to every triangle in this graph, it can no longer do this consistently, or just because triangles are not two colorable. So the PCP error in this case will be 0. So it looks like these graphs that are not two colorable is witnessed by many local neighborhoods in the graph. So it seems like they have these stronger local to global properties. But of course, we would like to not just consider two coloring, but also 3 coloring, 10 coloring, and so on. So what would be the PCP error in this case? Like you want to consider arbitrary 2 CSPs on these graphs. So we want to show that, in fact, if you take any 2 CSP here, we have a PCP with small error for that. So it seems like they have stronger local to global properties, but it's not really clear that they actually do, because is there a definition that implies such an error reduction for all 2 CSPs? And also, as I said, random hypergraphs are not HDX, so we don't know if there exists HDX that will satisfy whatever definition we come up with. So in fact, we only have 2 to 3 constructions that are based on algebra and topology. But fortunately, it turns out that we did come up with some definition called coboundary expansion, or there was already a definition that helped us that if you take HDXs satisfying those properties, you can show that any 2 CSP on this HDX has a PCP with low value. And this overcomes this expander barrier of Bogdanov. So this is something I will talk about in the remaining time. It's the main ingredient here was these direct product tests, which is purely a property testing question. And here we use these stronger local to global properties called coboundary expansion, which also I will define. Okay, finally, let me mention before I go into the technical part that this does not immediately give us a PCP, because you might have an arbitrary 2 CSP, like you're not guaranteed to have a 2 CSP on this very structured graph. Like remember, we want to reduce arbitrary 2 CSPs to 2 CSPs with low value. But we managed to do this, like to reduce arbitrary 2 CSPs to 2 CSPs with these very specific structure using fault tolerant routing that I will not really talk about today. So now, like to summarize the reduction, we start with the Noor's PCP, use this fault tolerant routing algorithms for HDX to reduce 2 CSPs to 2 CSPs where the constraint graph is fixed. So for every n, you have a fixed constraint graph, only the constraints vary on the edges. In the process, we blow up the alphabet by a bit, but let's ignore that part. And then we can use because our 2CSP has this very specific structure, we can use direct product testers to reduce their value from 0.99 to 0.01. And finally, using PCP techniques from past literature, we can reduce the alphabet. So, any questions?
So at the end of all this reduction, you get a proof of size n polylog n, right?
Yeah. So every step in this reduction only blows up the proof length by polylog n.
So how much time do all these reductions take?
You can show that they each takes polynomial n time. Poly n. Yeah.
So each step here incurs this extra polylog factors. It's not like there's one bottleneck.
Oh yeah. Actually, each every step. Actually, this step does not incur it, but yeah, this step incurs it. Both the NUR and this step incur it.
This is a related question, I guess. Like, 2 to the polylog n is bigger than poly n, right?
Yeah, but
So, yeah. How does it still polynomial time? Or is it like implicit or something?
yeah, it's like the number of bits of the alphabet is polylog n. So really,
Oh, I see. Okay.
so that number of bits really corresponds to the size.
But I guess the constraints are described somewhat implicitly. You can't really write down the graph for
Oh,
a
right,
constraint.
Yeah, constraints actually turn out to be very simple. They are like just some kind of, you have 2 big blocks of polylog n side bits, and you want like, some symbol here to be equal to some other symbol here, and so. Any other questions? Okay, so now for the rest of the talk, I will tell you something about this part of the reduction and about the property testing question that we solved for getting this step in the reduction. Okay, so that question is called direct product testing. So this is what we are aiming to do. So taking an arbitrary 2CSP on an HDX with large value and reducing its value to 0.01. But now let me turn to a local testing question. So this has, the definition has very less to do with PCPs. Okay, so fix any set system in n choose k. So k, each set contains k elements. And now look at any function on n bits on the universe n to 0, 1. And we will define the direct product encoding of this function to just be as follows. For every set, we'll write down the restriction of f to that set. So you can also think of the direct product encoding as this huge table where each entry is indexed by the k size subsets in the set system, and each location will contain the restriction of f. So each location will contain k bits, which are also ordered. And now the local testing question is that given an arbitrary table, h of t, which is purported to be a direct product encoding of some function, can you locally test whether it is actually a direct product encoding? Okay, and the natural 2-query test that you can design for this is to just pick 2 random sets from your from this set system, and which have some overlap here it's convenient to consider overlap of square root k, and just accept if h of ti restricted to the overlap is equal to h of tj restricted to the overlap. So of course, if you were truly a direct product encoding of some function, you will pass the test with probability 1. So the more interesting question is that whenever the test passes with some probability, we want it to say something useful about h. So it should not be that h is some garbage and it still passes the 2-query test. Okay, so we will say that this test has error epsilon if whenever the test passes with probability at least epsilon, there exists some function for which h of t is equal to f restricted to t on at least polynomial and epsilon fraction of the sets in the set system. So we want to find this, construct this set system so that it has the smallest possible error. So any questions about the definition? Okay, so now let's look at what was known about direct product testing. So one immediate question you can ask is that what if you take the simplest possible set system, which is all possible sets, all possible k-size subsets of the universe. And the Noor and Goldenberg showed that the direct product test on this set system has error which very, very small, which is like polynomial in monoid. Just as a reminder, this means that whenever any function h passes the direct product test with probability epsilon, which is larger than this polynomial in 1 over k, there exists a function for which h of t is equal to f restricted to on large fraction of the sets. But now this set system has many sets, so it has polynomial in n sets. And one question you can ask is, can we get the same type of guarantees or similar guarantees with a sparse set system, which has, let's say, only O of n sets or better than n to the k. Okay. And Dinur showed that actually if you take G to be an expander graph, and you just take the set system, your set system being k-sized neighborhoods of vertices in the expander graph, then the direct product test defined appropriately will have large error, like have error bounded away from 1. So whenever the test passes with probability 0.99, you can conclude that your function is close to a direct product function, but you cannot say anything about when the test passes with probability half.
So can we take k to be a small constant like 3?
I don't remember exactly, but yeah, like a large enough constant works. Probably you can optimize it. And this was the main ingredient in her PCB. And in fact, the same counter example that I showed can be, you can, just put it in this framework to get that a generic expander, for a generic tree-like expander, this set system of vertex neighborhoods will always have large error. Like you can construct functions which will always pass the test with probability half, but they do not correspond to any direct product encoding. So they fool the direct product test. Okay, so that led to Denur and Kaufman looking at high dimensional expanders as a possible avenue to avoid, this counterexample of Bogdanov. Okay, and they considered this, now in hindsight, a very natural set system, which is just the set of hyper edges in the hypergraph. And as we had said, like these hyper edges have very nice overlapping structure. So you can define again a natural two query test, which is just to pick two hyper edges with good overlap and test whether your function restricted to the overlap agrees. And they showed that a direct product test on this set system has error again 0.99. So they were not able to get this error close to zero, and they conjectured that there should be sparse HDX constructions where the test has close to zero error. So our first result, we showed actually that the usual way we define HDX using spectrum, just generalization of expander graphs using just graph spectrum. That's not sufficient. You need another notion of expansion called coboundary expansion. And in fact, this counterexample is a generalization of Bogdanov's counterexample. So it's not just that you need like overlapping or clique-like structure, you need something more. Even if you have a lot of cliques and so on, you may not have, the direct product test may not have small error. You really need this extra notion of coboundary expansion. And in fact, when you have this notion, then the direct product test has error close to zero. So this notion really characterizes when you have this direct product test with small error. Okay, and then it turns out that Chapman and Lubotsky very recently showed that there are these expanding hypergraphs with this extra notion of coboundary expansion. And we could show that these are sufficient for our purposes together, which implies that there are set systems which have size theta of n, where this direct product test has small error. So at just a very quick slide on like what's the connection of direct product testing with PCPs. So like, as I said, consider two CSP on this specific graph where, each hyperedge has been replaced with a clique, and now your constraints only have this very specific structure. They only lie on edges of this green graph. And let's say this has size n and value 0.99. The new CSP that we will construct, or the reduction, would be will have size theta of n, and we'll show that it has value 0.01. And this will be the construction. So the variables of the new CSP will just be cliques or hyper edges of your of this HDX graph. So each variable corresponds to a hyper edge. So here you have these T1 to T theta of n hyper edges. So the blow up is only a constant factor because there are only theta of n hyper edges. And in fact, we can use the direct product test error as a black box to show that the value goes from 0.99 to 0.01. And the rough argument is that if the value of this instance was larger than 0.01, it would mean that it passes the direct product test with probability at least 0.01, because a verifier would test consistency between random two hyperedges. And this allows you to conclude that the original 2CSP has large value. So sorry if this was too fast. Any questions about this?
So the consistency testing that you described for the previous example is what is replaced with this direct product testing?
Yeah, so the consistency test will be now the new constraints in your CSP. So what the new 2 CSP on this larger graph would just be to pick two vertices, which corresponds to picking 2 hyper edges and testing whether the assignment given to these 2 vertices agrees on the overlap. So it really corresponds to doing a direct product test. So using the error of the direct product test allows you to conclude that the value of this thing is small. Okay, so finally, let me just mention this notion of coboundary expansion, as it might be interesting to many of you. It really is like a very nice definition motivated from local algorithms. Okay, so the setup is that you just have a graph. And I'll define when this graph is a coboundary expander. So think of a graph with many triangles and consider any 2 XOR instance on this graph, which means consider a labeling of this edges with 0 or 1, which corresponds to a 2 XOR instance on the variables which are the vertices of these graphs. So natural question is whether this instance is satisfiable or not. And in this particular instance, you would see that it has a triangle with 1 plus 1 plus 1 is not equal to 0. So you can conclude it's not satisfiable. Because any satisfiable instance must have that all triangles are consistent. Their edges must add up to 0. So this is a locally inconsistent triangle, which is a witness of unsatisfiability. So so it's an observation that 2 XOR instances that are satisfiable must be locally consistent on all triangles. But the natural question is, what if we have a 2 XOR instance on this graph that is locally consistent on all triangles? So can we say something about its satisfiability? And it turns out for this graph, it is whenever it's locally consistent on all triangles, it has to be satisfiable. And you can of course ask, what if it's consistent on most triangles? So a coboundary expander is, a graph is a coboundary expander whenever the following property holds, that if all 2 XOR instances that are locally consistent on most triangles also have a solution that satisfies most edges. So it really is saying that, in fact, there's a very simple algorithm to solve or to check whether given 2 XOR on this graph, is it satisfiable or not.
So the expansion, is it that a coboundary expander also a spectral expander or something? Like why is this an expander?
Yeah. So I'll just mention very quickly about that. Okay, so here you can see that it's very easy to test whether a graph is a 2 XOR instance on this graph is satisfiable or not. You just pick a random triangle. And in fact, we show, like, you can, on these expanders, it's easy to even search for an assignment. You can just use simple propagation type algorithms. So actually turns out, of course, 2 XOR is a hard problem, like doing, getting good assignments. So all graphs are firstly not coboundary expanders. And why this is called expansion is because a complete graph, again, it's very easy to show that it is a coboundary expander. Like you can tie all cycles with triangles. And, I didn't define this, but some one-dimensional notion actually just is equivalent to spectral expansion or edge expansion. And also why it's a different notion is because the notion I defined is not equivalent to spectral. So like this graph, which is just a union of triangles, is going to be a coboundary expander because it only consists of triangles. But it won't be spectral, whereas a random graph will be spectral but not coboundary. It won't even have triangles.
So some notion of coboundary expansion, is it equivalent to edge expansion or what do you
So like a one-dimensional notion, like defined appropriately, is equivalent. Like I defined a two-dimensional notion of coboundary expansion.
And now what you're claiming is that the two-dimensional
Yeah.
versions.
So in one dimension for graphs, like all these, whatever you define turns out to be equivalent up to some constant factors. But when you go to higher dimensions, there are various generalizations like coboundary expansion, spectral, all these diverge in higher dimensions. Okay, so this is a summary of the reduction and finally some of the questions.
Any question?
Can you elaborate more on the co-boundary expanders? Like, so what kind of privilege, like, the co-boundary expanders can have versus the spectrum expanders?
Yeah, so firstly, like these 2XOR instances have very local algorithms. Like, for example, you can just you take a vertex and propagate its assignment to every other vertex, and this will satisfy most of the edges of the 2XOR instance.
I mean, will like co-boundary expanders provide even better, like, vertex expanders?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know any condition. And one thing I could mention is like similar co-boundary and its generalization, like co-systolic expanders have been used for constructing quantum codes.
Thank you.
Any other question? Okay, if not, let's thank the speaker.